Monday, October the 26th, 2020. And we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I see Councilor Edwards, our flag bearer, has our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
which is
stands
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Don. Madam Clerk, would you like to call a roll?
Councilor Edwards,
Present.
Councilor Clarke,
Present.
Councilor Driggs,
Present.
Councilor deMedeiros is present. I can see her. Councilor Cook,
Present.
Councilor Perry,
Present.
all present.
Everybody's present, and we're also joined by Town Administrator Cotta, Town Solicitor Marcello, Clerk Nancy Mello, and Deputy Clerk Jeannie V. We have a number of proclamations tonight for several of our residents who are now officially centenarians, meaning they're older than 100 years old. So we're going to take a minute to recognize them and congratulate them. And so I will briefly read these proclamations, and then we can offer our congratulations to all of them. The first is a proclamation in honor of Alice CAMARA, whereas Alice CAMARA grew up in Fall River, Massachusetts, and was one of 3 children. And whereas Alice left school and she started working in sewing factories in Fall River. And whereas Alice met her husband, married, and had 1 daughter, Joan. And whereas Alice loved going dancing, and whereas Alice now enjoys crocheting and playing bingo. And whereas Alice loves spending time with her family and feels her daughter, grandchildren, and great-grandchild all give her a sense of purpose. Be it therefore proclaimed that every official and citizen of the town of Tiverton extends to Alice CAMARA and her family the very best wishes and blessed assurance for continued good health and peace, and congratulates Alice CAMARA on her 100th birthday, November the 25th, 2020. And now we'd like to congratulate Helen CHRUPCALA on her 100 years. Whereas Helen CHRUPCALA was born in Fall River, Massachusetts, where she had 3 siblings and lived for most of her life. And whereas Helen went to hairdressing school and became a hairdresser. And whereas Helen met her husband, who owned a Fall River soda company, at a Polish picnic, they married and had 3 children and many grandchildren. And whereas Helen's children and grandchildren mean the world to her, and her face lights up when she sees them. And whereas Helen enjoyed going to Florida quite often, but lately has not been able to go. And whereas Helen loves to be outdoors just enjoying the fresh air, and she enjoys chatting with you while you take her for walks or just sit and chat. Be it therefore proclaimed that every official and citizen of the town of Tiverton extends to Helen CHRUPCALA and her family the very best wishes and blessed assurance for continued good health and peace, and congratulates Helen CHRUPCALA on her special 100th birthday, November the 20th, 2020. And we'd also like to congratulate William Burke on 100 years. Whereas William Burke grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island, and was one of 4 children. And whereas William served in the Army Air Corps for 3 years. And whereas William was married to the love of his life, Ethel, and shared many happy years with her until her passing, missing her dearly. And whereas William and Ethel had 3 children, and he considers his family especially important to him. And whereas William worked as a public accountant and was the president of the CPA Society of Rhode Island. And whereas William also owned greyhound dogs and raced them around Massachusetts. And whereas William took a liking to the ham radio when he was 18 years old and continually enjoyed going on it until a few years ago. Be it therefore proclaimed that every official and citizen of the town of Tiverton extends to William Burke and his family the very best wishes and blessed assurance for continued good health and peace, and congratulates William Burke on his 100th birthday, September the 8th, 2020. And finally, we'd like to congratulate Brendan HESLIN on 100 years. Whereas Brendan HESLIN grew up in New York City and was one of 6 children, And whereas Brendan served in the Army, and whereas Brendan was married to the love of his life, Irene, and had 4 amazing daughters. And whereas Brendan owned his business, Wholesome Foods, which kept him very busy. And whereas Brendan loves to play chess and woodworking. And whereas now Brendan loves most of all spending time with his children and grandchildren. Be it therefore proclaimed that every official and citizen of the town of Tiverton extend to Brendan HESLIN and his family the very best wishes and blessed assurance for continued good health and peace, and congratulates Brendan HESLIN on his 100th birthday, October the 12th, 2020. So let's stand in a round of applause for 4 of our citizens who have made it to a remarkable milestone, and wish them continued good health in the future. We should all be so lucky.
I'm going to write mine now, Trish.
Oh. There you go. Don't you have a year or 2 to go, Nancy? Aren't you like only 90, 96 or 97? On to the consent agenda. Item A, approval of town council minutes, September the 6th, 2020, special session, September 28th, 2020, the regular meeting, October 8th, 2020, the joint planning workshop, and finally, October 13th, 2020, the regular meeting. Item B, acknowledge receipt of minutes from boards and commissions. There are 3 sets of minutes from the Personnel Board and 3 sets from the Board of Canvassers. Item C, acknowledge receipt of reports. There's 1 from the Treasurer, Denise M, the September budget and revenue reports. Item D, acknowledge receipt of correspondence, which I don't think there is any. And the same with item E, approval of tax assessor abatements. And then finally, as just a reminder, we changed the ordinance so that we could approve license renewals, the non-advertised ones that don't have any outstanding issues on the consent agenda, rather than having to do them one at a time. So these include the tobacco dealers license renewals, the victualling license renewals, holiday license renewals, the antique license renewals. They are all non-advertised, and the licensing date runs from December the 1st, 2020 to November 30th, 2021. Item G, the town administrator, approval to advertise for annual fees and fine resolution. Item H, correspondence from zoning chair Gescheit, which has been referred to the town administrator and town solicitor. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent agenda? In that case, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. I'll take a roll call vote. Councillor Clarke,
Yes.
Councillor Driggs,
Yes.
Councillor deMedeiros. Yes. Councillor Perry. Joe?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Edwards,
Yes.
Councillor Cook,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Public comments received regarding a council agenda item. There are 2, one from Don Libby in support of the Groundswell Cafe and Bakery Class BLV liquor license, and Bill Zachary and Amy McNamee also in support of that, although that is an agenda item that we have coming up a little bit earlier. So I would give the participants the opportunity if they'd like to speak now because they're prepared to, or we can discuss them now, or if they're here and they prefer that we wait until that agenda item, that's okay. Mr. Cotta, are they with us, or do we have these?
They are not. They are not with us.
Okay. I'm going to ask the solicitor, do you want me to read these into the record now, or would you prefer that we wait and do it when we get to that agenda item?
Since that's a public hearing, we'll have to wait for that agenda item.
Okay. So, so we will do that, although I am looking for these. I find one in my, oh, they're on both sides. That's why.
Back, yeah.
Okay. Appointments and resignations. We have one request for the Historic Preservation Advisory Board, which is a 5-member board with 3-year terms. There are 2 vacancies. We have a request for a reappointment. Stuart B. Hardy of 51 Summerfield Lane is requesting reappointment to expire April the 15th, 2023. I don't know that Mr. Hardy's here because it's a reappointment, and
He is not.
John?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Stuart Hardy, 51 Summerfield Lane, to the Historic Preservation Advisory Board for a term to expire 4/15/23.
I'll second it.
There's a second. Denise, did you have a question?
Yeah, don't we have to have a motion before that to I'm losing my train
Waive
of
policy.
policy says that we have to appoint the next night.
So
So we have a motion for that.
Well, I'm going to defer to the solicitor on this because it seems to be the case that we do that when there's more than one applicant for a position. But if it's a reappointment and there isn't another applicant, we have been just taking a vote. So I'll
I
ask.
don't think so, Trish. I think we've been doing that.
Let's just do it to be safe. Just make the motion.
Okay, so
Madam President,
yes, John.
I withdraw my motion. I'd like to make a motion to waive our normal policy and reappoint this evening.
Second.
There's a second. So Council Clarke. Steve,
You're muted.
Yes.
Council deMedeiros,
Yes,
Council Driggs,
yes,
Council Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. Okay, John.
Now I'd like to make a motion to reappoint Stuart Hardy, 51 Summerfield Lane, to the Historic Preservation Advisory Board for a term to expire 4/15/2023.
And I'll second it again.
Okay. Councilor Clarke, Steve,
Yes.
Council deMedeiros,
yes,
Council Driggs,
yes,
Council Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
Yes.
and I'm also a yes. The Tax Assessment Board of Review, which is a 3-member board, there are 3-year terms. There are 2 vacancies. We have 1 request for reappointment, which is Kathleen Skripiak of 230 Kearns Avenue, requesting reappointment to expire on October the 15th, 2023. Yes, John.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to waive our normal policy and reappoint this evening.
second,
Denise seconds. Council Clarke,
Yes.
Councilor deMedeiros,
yes,
Councilor Driggs,
yes,
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Cook.
Yes. Can I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
I'm trying to figure out if there's enough people on the board. There's 3 members and there's 2 vacancies? How do they even exist? I just
Well,
Vacancies
asking.
Are also reappointments create a vacancy. It's considered a vacancy until it's been reappointed.
right.
Okay, so there's 1 vacancy?
so there's 1 vacancy, but there is a quorum. And the board's required by charter.
No, I'm not questioning the need for it. I just was wondering how it existed. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I am also a yes. So thank you to Mr. Hardy and Ms. Skripiak for
Madam
volunteering.
President,
John.
now I'd like to take the opportunity to make a motion to reappoint Kathleen Skripiak, 230 Cairns Ave, to the Tax Assessment Board of Review for a term to expire 10/15/2023.
second,
Second, Councilor Clarke,
Yes.
Councilor Driggs,
yes,
Councilor deMedeiros,
Yes,
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. And that brings us to the council sitting as a board of licensing, John McDowell, Groundswell Bakery and Cafe of 3883 Main Road, requesting approval for a BBL liquor license.
he's here.
And
Yes, hello, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. McDowell. So before we start, I would like to point out that we have received officially 2 letters of support encouraging the application. And I'm going to, because they have requested they be read into the record, I'll read them very briefly. From Donna Libby. Dear Board of Licensing, I write in support of Groundswell Cafe and Bakery's application for the issuance of a Class BBL liquor license. As an owner of a home on Neck Road, I passed by and watched the GC meticulously prepare its location for opening these many months. The GC is already and will only continue to enhance historic Tiverton Four Corners and will likely bring more visitors to the area, thus assisting all businesses to succeed at Four Corners. Having another place to eat and responsibly imbibe will also provide greater choice to area residents and visitors. I encourage the licensing board to approve GC's application. I would request that my email in support of GC's application be entered into the public record. Be kind, smile often, stay safe, stay healthy. Cheers, Don Libby, 453 Neck Road, Tiverton. And then a second addressed to the town of Tiverton. We are writing in support of Groundswell's request for a liquor license for their soon-to-be-open business. We are thrilled with the work they have done to the 2 properties they purchased in Four Corners. The care and attention that they have given to the properties is an example in our minds of a business who takes pride in its product and reputation. Our property is in Four Corners on Main Road, close to the intersection where Groundswell is located. We would love to see an establishment in the village that offers cocktails or a glass of wine with food. It would be so nice to have a place in Four Corners where you could go and meet other residents or just relax close to home. Based on the time and attention the owners of Groundswell have put into the upgrades and renovations, we have no doubt whatever they have planned will be tasteful and well run. We wholeheartedly support the request for a liquor license. Sincerely, Phil Zachary and Amy McNamee of 4094 Main Road, Tiverton.
Madam President?
Yes, Nancy.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I do feel I need to speak up. My husband and I went there to their establishment 10 days ago, not realizing they weren't open yet, but we're given a tour of the place by John's partner, David. And I have to tell you, this is such an incredible asset to the town they're doing on that site, which I know both the letters spoke to. But I just want to reinforce that. They really have done a wonderful, very, very tasteful job. And I think it will be a real, real plus for Tiverton.
Thank you, Nancy.
So, Mr. McDowell, would you like to tell us a little bit about your request for a liquor license and what you're planning to serve in your hours of operation?
Sure. And actually, David's here as well, and he can probably speak even a little bit better to that as well. But we've been patrons of the Provender for decades prior to our purchase of the property, and we've always loved the town and the area and the building and the businesses there. And we have always had a kind of a dream of having a cafe bakery, and with the extension of the BVL license, to have the opportunity to serve like light bites later in the day, and for people to stop in and just have a glass of wine. It's wine and beer only, so not cocktails. Just kind of very low key, and as really an amenity for the village and the town. And David, do you want to?
Hi there, this is David. And thank you, Nancy, for that, for that little.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
But I think what we really want to do is just offer, to John's point, as an extension to our business, really probably about 4 or 5 local craft beers, and then also some nice wine pairings with them. I will say we are opening Sunday officially at 6 a.m. And we have an incredible chef, and we just really feel that the wine would be an asset to the town as just another option, and going with all the wonderful pairings that our chef has been preparing, some great salads and sandwiches and gluten-free options, and all fresh scratch baked goods.
And thank you for that. Can you just let us know what your planned hours for operation in terms of serving the alcohol would be?
Yes, right now we're 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, I'm sorry, 7 days a week. And then if we are granted the liquor license, we're thinking 9 p.m. We don't want to be a late night establishment. We just really want to end around 9 or 10 p.m., maybe 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, but nothing really late.
Excuse me, members of the council, this is Richard deMedeiros speaking. I represent the applicants. Not sure if you're hearing me. I hope you can.
Yes,
We can.
Yes, go ahead, Richard. We can hear you.
Council. Okay, great. Thank you for consideration, by the way, of this application. I will be brief because I know the council has other matters to attend to tonight. So 3883 Main Road, which is the former Provender building, was sold to my clients in July of 2020. And their intent was to restore the building to its past and its historic beauty, really, and which they have done. I'm excited to say that their cafe, which I went to yesterday with my wife, will be officially open for business on Sunday, November 1st. So the cafe serves breakfast items from their wonderful bakery, sandwiches, salads, and desserts. They are seeking a BVL license to complement their food service. I know there was an issue with respect to the septic system, which they have addressed by designing and submitting to the DEM a design for a new and upgraded septic system, which will accommodate the restaurant as it is presently set up. So there will be no table service. There's no bar service. There's no draft system. It's not going to be a pub. There, people will go to a small area of the counter where you order your food and your beverages, and they'll be able to order a glass of wine or a beer and sit at the table and have it. There are no plans, of course, for entertainment at the establishment. As I mentioned, the septic system is being upgraded. We're waiting for approval from DEM, and then they have an installer ready to go. The only thing I would add is that from what I can see, being a Tiverton resident myself for 40 years, I mean, these two gentlemen are deeply committed to Tiverton, not only economically, but personally. And they've invested heavily in this building, as well as in 3995 Main Road, which is across the street, which will be a retail store featuring garden items and related products. Substantial investment has been made to enhance both buildings and preserve their historic character. In addition, my clients have purchased a home on Nanaquacket Road, which they have also renovated substantially. So I believe that the Crownsville Cafe will be a destination for many and enhance the Four Corners historic site, an area. It will bring travelers from all over the state who will substantially benefit the retailers in the area. There are letters of support in the file. There are no objectors to the request. I would ask that the council act favorably upon this application. Thank you.
Trish,
Yes, Denise.
you asked a question, but I'm not sure if it was answered. From what time to what time will liquor be served?
Well, I think I'm not sure what time it's starting, but originally it was at 6, and then maybe they said some nights they might stay up until 9 or 10. Could we get a
Yeah,
little
but
bit
what
more?
time are we starting serving liquor?
Well, I would think if somebody wants a glass of wine with their lunch, they'd be able to have that, but I don't
Okay.
anticipate too many people having breakfast with a
No,
beer.
but I thought, Nancy, I thought that when we do these liquor licenses, there's certain times. Am I correct? Most people don't have a
Times that the
morning
state
liquor license.
allows, and then the council can, if the applicant requests a certain time, the council can have that put on the license, and it restricts it to just the time they're asking for.
Well, we'd like to be able to offer a glass of wine or a beer with somebody's lunch. So I'm not sure if that restricts it, and that would be it, I would think. Lunch and dinner.
No, Richard, it's usually lunch, but I know that some people have requested liquor licenses in the morning. For like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Bloody Marys or whatever.
Yeah, we won't be doing that. Yeah. No morning drinking.
Okay, so it'd be like 12 until whenever you close,
Correct.
Yes.
11:30 to whenever you close.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that works.
And will there be alcohol served outside or only inside? Or I guess you're saying that it's counter service, but
Not served.
will people be allowed to take the alcohol outside, or is it staying in the building?
Can I address that? There are four small tables outside on the patio, on the porch. I guess you'd call it a porch. They're very small tables. They seat 2 people. So it is possible, and we'd like to be able to have somebody walk outside with their glass of wine and a sandwich if they wished, or a beer and a sandwich. Other than that, they wouldn't be leaving the premises. They'd be still in the building at that time.
I only ask that because it's important that when we grant a liquor license, we have to note specifically on the liquor license where the alcohol will be consumed. And so if there's a desire to have it outside, if the council so approves that, it has to be noted on the liquor license.
That makes sense. We would appreciate the ability to use the tables outside, especially with the COVID situation that we have now, people eating outside, although I don't know how long that's going to last with the weather changing, but nevertheless, there are 8 seats outside. So I would think the license would be for the interior plus the porch of the premises. But beyond that, nothing else, of course.
I do have one question about your septic system. So you have an application pending with DEM for approval?
Yes, that's
John,
correct.
yes, John, maybe you or David can answer these questions about the septic. You know more about it than I do.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But you don't have an approval yet, and obviously without an approval, you don't have a new septic system. So I guess the question is, can we issue a liquor license contingent on, because we often do this, subject to meeting all legal requirements, meaning it would be contingent on your certificate of conformance once the septic system is installed?
I think that's the understanding, correct. We had talked with Bill Moore quite extensively about this process, and he actually, it was his recommendation that if we had a septic plan drawn up that was submitted to DEM, that at that point we could then resubmit our application for the BVL license, subject to, or with the approval of, subject to the approval of the application and subsequent installation of the new conforming septic system.
Okay.
William Moore is in the room too.
Okay.
Yes, Denise.
So that wouldn't delay their opening November 1st. They just couldn't serve liquor.
Right.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, it's totally separate from our opening date or current operations. And the only, and also we don't need the new septic without the BVL. So that's why this process sort of happened the way it did with the submission of the plan, approval of the license, hopefully with the understanding that the septic will then be installed prior to actual issuance and operating with that BVL license.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll be there Sunday at 6 a.m. We're good.
Okay.
Madam Clerk, do you know of any other outstanding legal requirements that need to be met?
No, not as long as you're granting granting the license, but not issuing it until the requirements have been met.
Okay. I would actually,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
So I just want to make sure, because this was an issue in the past. The license does need to specify where liquor can be sold. So it should specify that the liquor can be sold on the premises and on the porch only. And
Okay. We'll print it right on the license.
Okay. So unless there are any other questions, I'm happy to entertain a motion, but I do have a request if we make a motion, which is that you know, when we put subject to meeting all legal requirements on these licenses, especially one that has something that's outstanding that this does, then it becomes an extra work and extra burden for somebody to double check on what the legal or outstanding legal requirement is. So I'd like the motion, if somebody's willing to make it, to not only say subject to meeting all legal requirements, but in this case, because we know of a specific thing, which is subject to the issuance of the DEM certificate of conformance on the septic system. That way there's no confusion on it, and the clerk's office knows exactly what they need to see in order to grant the license once the septic work is done. Nancy?
When you say subject to the issuance of the DEM conformance, is that also, are you trying to include and the installation of the system?
That's when you get it. You get a DEM certificate
don't
of
get it till-
conformance. They come and they do their last inspection and throw holy water on it, and then they actually issue you. And it goes to the building official, by the way. They give you a piece of paper that says it's installed, it conforms, you're all good.
Okay.
Madam President, just want to remind you that this is a public hearing, so you need to ask public comment before you take the final vote.
Bill Moore wanted to say something. Bill?
Just one quick note. What we can do is when the certificate of conformance is issued by Rhode Island DEM, we can issue them a new certificate of occupancy with the license on it. So that way everybody will have proof that it was done, and we can go from there if that makes sense.
I think it does. I just like to make it easy. You know, this happens periodically with us where we issue something based on an outstanding item that doesn't actually get specified and then something goes forward or something goes wrong, and then the town's in the position where you know, we've actually granted a license that we didn't intend to, and that causes all kinds of problems, not only for us but for the applicant. So I think it's I think in this case, especially because it's a septic system that needs to be designed and installed, that you know, the clerk's office should have, whether it's a new CO with that on it or the certificate, whatever it is, but you know, so that we don't end up in this position. I'm sure the applicants are upstanding folks who have no intention of doing this, but we've had a couple of cases in the past where, you know, we've granted something conditional, it goes forward, and now the town's in the position of, you know, trying to undo the mess. So, are there any members of the public who would like to be heard on this? Chris, do you have any members of the public who would like to speak?
I don't have anybody with their hands raised yet, but anybody who's in the waiting room who would like to speak on this issue, please raise your hand. And if you're happen to be watching this on YouTube videos, you're not live with us at this meeting, you can call in at 877-853-5247. Again, that's 877-853-5247. There's still nobody with their hand up.
Rich?
Denise?
I'm not sure I can mention this, but I think I can. We have Q&As, question and answer, and people that submitted. There is somebody on the Q&A that is also in support of Groundswell liquor license, and he lives on Main Road. So I just thought I'd mention that because maybe he doesn't know how to call in, but he is
So
on there.
It's Vinny Carvalho. He
Vinny
was
Carvalho.
actually live earlier in the waiting room, but I don't see him there now. And I was
Well,
going to
he
mention
wrote-
this.
He wrote, I am also in support of the Groundswell
did.
liquor license, Vinny Cavallo, 434 0 Main Road. I just thought I'd mention that.
I'm going to ask for the second time for anybody in the waiting room to raise their hand if you want to speak on this public hearing matter for the groundswell. And if you are happen to be watching this or here on YouTube, you can call in at 877-853-5247. And we'll do this one more time. If there's anybody in the waiting room that wants to speak on this, please raise your hand. And if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, you can call in at 877-853-5247. 5247. So that would be the third time. I still don't see anybody. So Madam President, I'll hand it back to you.
In the absence then of any requests, we'll close the public hearing. So do I have a motion from someone on the council?
I have one more question.
Oh, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, is there an approved design at this point for a septic system? Has there been ground samples or whatever they call them to determine if, there's enough area there and the correct, ground, sand, gravel, ledge or whatever that, is there an approved design at this point?
There is, Todd Chaplin from Mount Hope Engineering did the design and submission for us, and he's, I believe, done a lot of other systems locally, so knows the area, very familiar with the area. And they were out a couple months ago, I think, at this point initially, and then they've been working on their design since then and actually filed, I think, a couple weeks ago. So yes, that's all been complete. Thank you for asking.
Oh, could you just clarify though, there's addition, I mean, just to clarify there, because there's a difference between a submission and approved design. And sometimes that takes a while, but do you actually have an approved design or is it just in the submission phase right now? Sometimes it takes a while.
Yeah, the state came back with, I think, a couple of questions about the initial plan, and then it was resubmitted since then to meet their, I guess, specifications that they were looking for. So it's just in the, I guess, submission phase still currently, yes.
Well, hopefully that won't take too long for you.
Thank you. I think they have what they need now, so it's just waiting on them.
Any other questions? No. Council. In that case, do I have a motion? Well, I will make a motion then if I don't have the raised hand, but I would make a motion to.
You have two raised hands.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Go ahead, John.
John?
Oh, okay. Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to, I want to make sure I say this correctly, to grant the BVL liquor license for John McDowell / Groundswell Bakery and Cafe, 3883 Main Road, subject to meeting all legal requirements and subject to specifically the certificate of approval for their septic system at the property. Is that acceptable to the chair?
It is, although would you call it a certificate of conformance? Because that's what it is.
Certificate of conformance, yes.
The clerk's office will be nice and clear on that.
Second.
And there's a motion in a second. So if there are any other questions, I'll take a roll call vote. Councilor deMedeiros?
Yes.
Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor Driggs?
Yes.
Councilor Perry?
Yes.
Councilor Clarke?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. So best of luck, gentlemen.
Thanks for your time.
And most importantly, it's about time.
Thank you very much. Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. We're right there with you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to general business, item A, approval ratification of a 3-year contract commencing October the 26th, 2020 and ending October 25th, 2023 for Deputy Chief James Costa.
So in accordance with the last meeting that we had and the provision in the contract that outlined the possibility of having a deputy chief in the police department, I've worked with Chief Jones to come up with a nominee, and he selected and I agreed that James Costa should be our next deputy chief of the police department. And we've worked with him. I've worked with him to at least formulate a contract that is amenable to both, at least my office and him, which is in front of you right now. So, and I know the chief spoke very highly about him and at the process of what we needed to do to actually bring a chief on, deputy chief on, and the rationale for that and the duties and responsibilities that will be fulfilled by this position. So I don't know if Chief is here, if he wants to speak. No, and there's Mr. Costa himself. He's sitting in Patrick's office.
There we go. Welcome, Lieutenant Costa.
Hi, thank you.
Any questions or from the council?
Not at this time, no. No, you're not the council. Oh, I'm sorry.
John?
Thanks. Just a quick question for our administrator, since we're creating this position. And I know this is the first time we've had it in like what, a couple decades.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. In any case, the question I had, and I don't know if I saw it anywhere out here, was in filling this role, you know, going forward, obviously, since this is the first time we're, you know, we've got the candidate that the chief has selected, but let's say in the future there is a vacancy. Will there be additional, like, will there be testing requirements and stuff like you would typically go through for the union? Like, so when you go from, you know, patrolman to sergeant to any position, there's usually a testing regimen that happens. And I didn't see that anywhere in the structure. Maybe it was in the position description that I missed.
No, we did not do any testing. It was because Lieutenant Costa had worked his way up through the department, has been a long senior tenured employee, and it has a full breadth and knowledge of, you know, what the police department entails. There wasn't a need. Maybe that's something we might want to look at in the future.
Yeah, not for this appointment specifically, but for future appointments.
But it may
that
be
would be,
something we would entertain the future based on the youngness of the department today. And we would definitely want to bring somebody in from within, should Mr. Costa decide to retire at some point in the future.
yeah, like I said, I know it, you know, to move up the ranks, there's usually testing within it. So it would be worthwhile looking at. It would be after this appointment.
Okay. You muted, Denise.
Denise.
First of all, John, it isn't a union position, so I'm not quite sure if it's a little different. But I do have a question that, and this has nothing to do with you, Jim, because you know how much I support you with this position. Usually we appoint and then ratify. And also, did this position have to go through the personnel board?
No, because it's a promotional position that didn't require it to, because it's not an appointment. We're promoting him to deputy chief. And I actually did reach out to Jim CAMARA, and the chief did as well. And he opined the same way, that this would be a promotion from within the department.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure we're dotting every I and crossing every T, because it is a new position. So I don't want anybody to say anything about this, but of course I support Jim. I've known him for a long time and I think he'll do a fantastic job. But I was just wanted to make sure that we're doing everything correctly, so this doesn't come in question.
Okay.
Yeah.
John, go ahead.
Hand up. On that note, does it come under, you know, it's not a union position, but would it come under also a posting? I mean, can you just make it an internal job, or by federal law do you have to or post it? I don't know. I just don't want to.
Well, it's not in the charter, so it's not described as something that should go through personnel, because it isn't in the charter. I mean, we eventually have to put it in the charter, I would assume.
Correct.
But it's not in the charter, so there's really no.
But it is in the police contract, though. It's mentioned.
Yeah,
it is mentioned. No, my concern is that it wasn't posted. Does that cause a problem?
I don't believe it does.
All jobs are posted. They have to be posted.
I don't believe it does, because when we spoke to the union about this, the only agreement that we had with them is that the position would be hired from within. And that's what we did. So it's a discussion between the chief's selection on promotion and my consent.
Right. I don't think we got into a problem with Jeannie Vay. She was promoted, and sort of the same. I think it's the same. It looks the same to me. where Nancy felt that Jeannie could do the job, had the credentials, and she promoted her. It looks like the same thing, although I don't know, Officer Costa. I don't have your credentials, which are probably just wonderful. Is it in here? I don't,
No, we didn't submit his resume.
okay, all right.
Trish,
Yes.
Anyway,
Trish, maybe Mike Marcella would like to weigh in on this, just so we have a
I
attorney.
was just going to ask the solicitor.
So I agree with the town administrator. This was a promotional promotion within the department. It was up to the town administrator on consultation with the police chief. They exercised their authority under the charter to make the appointment. They're making the appointment, and they're just asking for the council to ratify the contract and the appointment.
okay.
So just to clarify a little bit on the union position, just to make sure everybody's clear on this. In the last contract, there was some discussion about creating this position. And there was a verbal, not necessarily written into the contract, kind of, handshake agreement that if we created this contract, that we would be promoting from within. And obviously we had good candidates, and obviously we had an ideal candidate. But we did specifically discuss the idea that, after this time, this is an administrative management position. And so the hiring of that position, going forward is not within the union's purview. And obviously we'd always like to promote from within. And I think that will always be the intention, but just as a matter of course, that it was determined that we would not have any formal agreement with the union on this, because really this is a management position, and the union, we don't want to set a precedent of the union sort of having say over who we put into management jobs. So there is no formal arrangement on that. I do think, to the solicitor's point, our position is really to ratify the contract. Ultimately, it's the town administrator at the suggestion and advice of the police chief to promote or appoint this position, not us. It's our job to ratify it. So I think we're all really good. And I am just thrilled for Lieutenant Costa, who I think is going to do a great job. My only regret is that because of the COVID thing, we can't have a nice little ceremony that we would normally want to have to celebrate this. Denise?
I'd like to make a motion to approve and ratify a 3-year contract commencing October 26th, 2020, and ending October 25th, 2023 for Deputy Chief James Costa.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, go ahead, John.
So one quick question for the administrator, because I was looking at the financial impact statement. Is there any particular reason why we broke out base and longevity and we didn't just make it all base?
So I'm trying to make sure that I followed the same rationale that we did with Chief Reimels in his contract. We followed the same exact format to ensure that I didn't penalize him and his family by commingling things together and not seeing it truly for what it is.
Okay, thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, I'm going to go to roll call vote. Counselor Clarke.
Yes.
Counselor Edwards.
Yes.
Counselor deMedeiros.
Yes.
Counselor Driggs.
Yes.
Counselor Perry.
Yes.
Counselor Cook.
Yes.
And I am also a yes. Congratulations to our new Deputy Chief, James Costa.
We'll make
Congratulations, Jim.
And again, I'm sorry, as I was with Chief Reimels, that this COVID thing is preventing us from having a little something, but at some point, hopefully we will. But congratulations, Jim, and thanks for being willing to step up and take the position.
We'll make arrangements to have him sworn in tomorrow with Nancy, and to make sure that his wife could be there as well.
Excellent.
Wonderful.
Thank you
Okay.
all.
Good luck, Jim. Good job.
Good luck, Deputy Chief.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so where's my agenda? Moving right along.
Speaking of Jeannie V.
Speaking of, town clerk, approval of modification of deputy clerk Jeannie V contract expiring June 1, 2020, and approval for a 2% raise as of June 1, 2020. Nancy?
So what I'm actually asking for is to modify the contract. I included a red line version of the existing contract as well as a clean version. The actual contract that was signed that had been reviewed by the prior administrator and put in has a lot of boilerplate in there that has nothing to do with that position. There was a similar to what I have tracked on here. There was a contract that was much simpler, which is what I hope to get it down to now. There's no impact on this at all. It is the same salary setup, the same vacation, the same holiday. It's just that some of the wording and the language did not really pertain to that position. They took it, I believe, from a department head type contract. And some of the examples is that, you know, you can't have a separate job without permission. I mean, this is beyond what you would need for that position. Essentially, Jeannie was serving as the fourth clerk in that office. We needed a clerk to be able to sign documents and be more involved with council meetings per se. It did not need to go into some of what this is. There's no vehicle being allowed. There's no particular line item account for expenses for them. I don't even understand what the notice part is. There's no moving or relocation section. So what I've done, and I guess the most important part, was that it was written in the language of the contract that she would have to work one shift, coming in late, staying late to do a council meeting. That really doesn't make sense in our office setup, because for one thing, she'd be in there alone working, because I don't stay there between closing of the town hall and the council meeting, and I don't expect another clerk would either. So, and that would also impact the work that the clerks can get done during the day. I think Chris sees that these clerks are going all day long. To take a clerk out on a day like that, an example is today I had clerk out sick. The office was crazy. So I'd like to remove that part and this waiver part. I did run it by the solicitor, and he suggested that the section on choice of law remain in. It's not in the AFSCME and stuff, but I mean, if you want that back in. But I'm asking that you please modify the contract to put it more in line on what the position is. There are 2 years left to this contract. And at the same time, Jeannie has done the job well. She's never had a sick day since she started a year ago. She's committed and dedicated to it. She attends all the council meetings. And I will say this, right now she's paid less than my clerk is. And there was also a section in there that said she had to work 40 hours before she get any overtime. That puts her pay below my senior clerk. And I just thought, in fairness, it should all be equal in there. Jeannie's job is different. Her job description's a little different, and she will have the authority to sign in the absence of the clerk. So I've recommended the 2%. That will bring her in line exactly to the penny of what we are paying our senior clerks.
Donna?
Can I say something?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, the thing is that if you're going to give a 2% raise, I thought you need a fiscal impact statement. Or is it already figured in? It sounds like you want to bring her to the same pair as the senior clerk, which you're saying she's not.
It's
So
not. She's paid 50 cents an hour less than my senior clerk is.
I know, but I think you would need a physical impact statement, would you
Well,
not?
for the percent on the raise, if you want me to put the impact, we could always make that amendment the following meeting. It's going to be retroactive back to her June 1st date anyway. But when I mentioned no impact, the modifications on this contract create no economic impact at all.
She was slated for a 2% raise on June 1st. That's not.
June 1st. Well, no, I had to bring that to council to get approved.
You're muted, Denise.
No.
Am I missing something? It sounds like that you want to add to her pay. Are you saying it's already there?
Yeah, can we just clarify on this, because there's a couple questions. So was there a 2% increase already factored into the salary as part of the budget that was adopted at the FTR?
Yes.
Yes. So
Okay.
the 2% increase has been adopted via the FTR.
Okay.
Is that correct, Nancy? I'm trying to clarify that.
It is.
Shaking his head,
The
yes.
contract requires I bring it to the council as well.
Right, okay, but it was budgeted for and it was approved as part of the FTR.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so that answers that question. I know that John and Denise have questions. John?
So, thank you, Madam Chair. The question I had is again related to that 2% increase. Is that contemplated then in that section 4 where it says the employee shall receive an hourly salary of blah 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 in year 1 contract with merit-based salary adjustment in year 2 and 3?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
What is it?
Her rate will now be $24.99, which is exactly what all the senior clerks in every department get.
All right.
And she is actually doing night meetings and everything for this.
No. All right.
Plus her night.
49 cents.
49 cents. Denise?
It's all right. My questions have already been answered.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
No, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, wait a minute. So hang on a second. Solicitor Marcelo has his hand up.
The only thing that I would like to make sure the contract, because it is a contract separate from the collective bargaining agreements that governs that the 22 section 22 choice of law be added back in. That's just basically saying if there's a dispute over the contract or its contents, it's governed by Rhode Island law. We need that as a matter of course.
Okay, so that can be, so we can make a motion
as amended.
Part of this to include the amendments suggested by the town solicitor, correct? Yes, Mike? Yes, okay, all right. So Donna, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. I make a motion for the approval of the modification of the deputy clerk Jeannie Vay contract expiring June 1st, 2022, and approval for the 2% raise as of June 1st, 2020, which includes the amendment by the town solicitor to be included.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Any other questions? In that case, Councilor Clarke?
Yes.
Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor deMedeiros?
Yes.
Councilor Driggs?
Yes.
Councilor Perry?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
And I'm also yes. All right, which brings us on to our last contract for the night, which is the approval ratification of a 3-year contract commencing October 1st, 2020 and ending September 30th, 2023 for Town Administrator Christopher Cotta. So Chris and Mike, do you want to give us an overview? And Mike, I'll let you take lead if Chris would prefer that.
Sure. So this was negotiated I'm sorry, John, go ahead, John. John had a question, I think.
Yeah, before we get in, I didn't see the fiscal impacts summary for this position
Right.
in the packet, which I understand the prior contract, we probably didn't need one, but this one seems more in line with what we just did for the deputy chief. So wasn't sure if that was a necessity or not.
Yes.
I have it in my packet. I don't know. It was in my packet.
No, I don't have it. I was just going to ask the same question, actually.
And there's no fiscal impact.
Yeah, I don't have one. I don't have one here, although.
Was it in the printed one maybe? Because
I have a printed one. It's a comparison to the interim town administrator position. Nancy,
This is not interim anymore. It really should
maybe it
have
didn't get scanned. Or just maybe it didn't get emailed to us.
No, I'm not sure it was added to that. We probably have it. If Mike sent it, I must have it, but it wasn't put in as part of this.
Yeah, I don't have it either.
If we could email it real quick, I mean, I'm sure we could pull it up, right?
Good.
well, Nancy, I'm sorry, Nancy. I'm looking at mine. It was dated March 7th, 2018. It's with your date on it. I don't know where that.
Huh?
That was when he was that was when he was made interim.
Right. That's
18?
I wasn't here at
18.
18.
No, not 18.
It was
19,
2020,
It had interim
6
for
months ago.
But now, hang on
2020.
hang on one second. But one thing to keep in mind is that the salary that's listed here is the salary that was adopted as part of the FTR.
Well, you still need a physical impact statement.
I understand why people want to see one, but what I'm also telling you is that what's in here is what is the budgeted amount in the adopted in the recently adopted budget via the FTR. So we're not there's not a difference in fiscal impact in this year than what was budgeted for, I guess is the way to say it.
It should actually be substantially less because I'm not taking health care and I'm not taking the town pension.
Thanks, Chris. So generous.
I know, but isn't it talking about salaries for 2022 and 2023 to increase by 2%? Isn't that, I mean.
Well, that wouldn't be in the impact statement anyhow, but that's, I mean, and that is also subject
Am I
to.
not looking
And
at it right?
that's also, I mean, this isn't a union contract where we're, bound in those years, right, to give an increase. So in a union contract where you're bound to do that, you have a multi-year fiscal impact statement because you signed that contract. That's what it's going to be. All of our department heads, as well as our town administrator, technically, serve at the pleasure of the council. And so, therefore, they're not, increases are not guaranteed. Denise?
Well,
But they're not in the contract either. I've never seen them in the contract.
Seen what in the contract?
In what? Yeah.
Every year. That's not usually in anyone's contract.
No, not the department heads or the administrators. I mean,
No.
in the
but it's in
union, right, that's what I'm saying. In the union contract, there's a multi-year fiscal impact statement because in the union contract, it's fixed for multiple years. Denise?
Yeah, but that's not what I'm saying. In the in any of the department heads and including the administrator's contract, we've never put the raise increase for every 3 years.
Right.
Every year. It says it right there that he's going to get 2% every year. We've never done that before. And
No,
I
it says
thought,
upon evaluation.
Right.
yeah, but I thought if we were going to go onto the merit-based system, that's why we didn't decide on that anymore.
Well,
Not that I'm saying he won't deserve a 2%, but what I'm saying is
Deserve
never
5%.
been a contract before.
Obviously that's, I guess that's a minimum, it's a minimum raise based upon a successful evaluation. If the council wanted to go higher, then they could.
Yeah, but we usually don't do that because if a year we can't afford a 2%, we don't give raises. We usually don't guarantee raises throughout the contract.
Excuse me, Denise, may I speak?
Sure, Donna.
Okay. It looks like the word shall is being used, which it means it will happen. And I have to disagree with that. I mean, we are going to merit-based, which would be up to the town council after a performance review. I'm not trying to be hard about this, but the shall increase by 2% is just seems inappropriate to me in the contract. The way this is being done.
Well, it's just not past practice. It's not how we usually do these contracts.
No, I agree. It needs to be reworded or something. I don't like it. I'm just gonna say I don't like it.
That's fine. We can go back. Can I just go through the terms of the contract and we can talk about, it seems like everyone's stuck on the race part. Fine, I understand, but I just want to go through the terms because there are some significant changes. Trying to hold on. So this was negotiated by Nancy and I and Chris, obviously, on the council direction. It is a 3-year contract. It's retroactive date appointment October 1st. The duties are consistent with what has been in the prior contract, with the one exception is that we're having a carve out for his role and his voluntary service on the board of directors of the National White Collar Crime Center, which he's been a member of for many years. Again, it has the average hours, and then any other outside employment other than what I just told you, and that's really not employment, but it's, it is a thing that he does go to. Would need to be approved by the council. The policies, procedures, like anyone else, he's subject to the employee handbook and any other policies and procedures that the town may adopt. The first year salary, again, which is retroactive to October 1st, would be $95,000 payable in the same way any other municipal employees paid. Let's skip B for a second because that's where we just had some discussion. Retirement deferred compensation, he is not, he's eligible, he is not participating in the MERS system. He's not required to participate in the MERS system, and there's actually a carve out for town administrators. But in lieu of that contribution that the town would be making to the MERS system, he is requesting and it was in the contract that he would get a 6% match of his employee's salary to put into like a deferred comp plan that's offered from the either city managers association or any type of deferred comp plan that may be out there. John probably knows more about that than I do. Vacation 4 weeks or 20 days, which is standard. And you cannot carry more than 10 days per year. And consistent with Rhode Island law, if he has any vacation days at the end of his contract, he needs to get paid for that. Sick leave is 10 days, sick days per year. And we have the right to get a certificate or a doctor's note if it's more than 3 days. And it accumulates up to 100 days. And there shall be no cash value for any accumulated sick time upon termination or separation. It's also entitled to 3 personal days per year, which are also not accumulated. Bereavement is pretty standard. Holiday pays mirrors the holidays off mirrors the union contract. Liability insurance, post insurance, again, just standard provision, boilerplate. He's automatically covered by the trust policy or any other future policy that the town may have. Life insurance of $100,000 for the term of employment. He is waiving the medical insurance and not getting any money. Not only is waiving, he's not asking any money for that waiver. He is asking for the ability to enroll in the dental family dental plan, which we agreed to. Continuing education development requirement was a standard thing that was in the prior town administrator's contract. Expense reimbursement, again, same provision that was in the prior contract with the prior town administrator. Termination is right out of the charter. Status report that was right out of the upon leaving. That's in the right out of the prior contract. You do reserve the right to extend the contract. If you're not going to extend it, you're going to give 30 days notice. 18 town property, which basically says upon its termination or separation, it's going to give back town property. Governing laws, Rhode Island law. I did put an arbitration provision in there. Basically, if there's any dispute about this contract, we're not going to go to court. We're going to go to arbitration. It saves the town money. And right now, frankly, courts are closed and it's very difficult to get any type of lawsuit resolved in court. So I just put in an arbitration provision, which was agreed to. And that's it. It was hard. Nancy was a very hard negotiator. Chris will tell you that. And as far as the 2%, you guys can decide what you want to do. But go ahead. I'm sorry. So if anybody has any questions of me, please.
Okay, Denise, you have your hand up?
Well, I just noticed in the deputy chief's contract, it says, with the potential for merit-based salary adjustments in years 2 and 3. Could we put something like that in there?
I think it's in most of the contracts, Denise. I think that would,
Oh, right.
that would
This
be
was what I
fine.
had in front of me, Donna. So
Yeah,
that's how
no, but I've seen it in the other contracts also.
Would it be amenable to change that language simply to say that in that section? I mean, obviously Chris would have to agree to it, but that might be the solution here. John, you have a question?
Go ahead.
John?
I thought you were asking the administrator a question. I don't know if you want to handle that. I'm going to move to a separate section.
Oh, I was just sort of bringing that up as a possible solution here is to substitute the same language in the deputy chief's contract.
Sure, I'll agree to that.
Chris would agree to that. So we could make that change to section 4B. Okay, Denise?
Yeah, I just want to make it clear that we never guarantee a specific amount because we don't know what every budget season is going to bring. And it just worries me if we guarantee it in this contract, it becomes a practice. And I don't think that's a wise decision.
Okay. I mean, I do think this language does refer to an annual, to a performance review. So it's not an absolute guarantee, but I take the point. And if everybody's more comfortable with the same language that's in the new deputy chief's contract, we can use that. John?
Thanks, Madam President. Actually, just to expound on that, I mean, the way that I read it is it was essentially capping the increase at 2% year over year. So let's say Chris does a phenomenal job and the next town council says, we don't want to give Chris 2, we want to give him 5. If this language is in there, maybe they're handcuffed to 2. So
right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. And then the section that I wanted to focus on, actually, Mr. Marcel, thank you for noting that. I do know a little bit about the retirement space, but on section 5, I think the contract should be modified to spell out the specific match formula that we would be using. Simply saying, we'll contribute a match on employee contributions up to 6%. That leaves it open for interpretation and, potentially the town saying, if Mr. Cotta agreed to dollar for dollar match, us coming back and saying, well, the contract is really vague, this could mean 50 cents on the dollar up to 6%. So whatever that discussion was around the match that the town would give, I think it should be stipulated in the contract there. So if it's dollar for dollar, then it should say dollar for dollar.
Or not dollar for dollar.
It's dollar for dollar up to 6%, right?
Yeah, so if I put in 10%, you'd be putting in 6.
Correct, but the fact that it's not stipulated as a dollar for dollar match in there. So I think we should amend the contract to read, as directed by the employee, And we'll contribute a dollar for dollar match of employee contributions up to 6%.
Okay, I agree.
Spent a lot of time in plan documents, so.
That's fine. That's fine. I agree.
Any other comments? Anything? Do I have then a motion to approve, subject to the two modifications that have been suggested? John?
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. So if there are no other questions, roll call vote. Counselor Clarke,
Yes.
Counselor Edwards,
Yes.
Counselor Driggs,
Yes,
Counselor deMedeiros,
Yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
and Counselor Cook.
Yes.
And I am also a yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Town clerk, approval of transfer of $10,000 from account 1169.95, the financial town referendum, to account 1020.6890, the council contingency fund.
Okay, so this fund is used just for the financial town referendum. And I'm sure you all realize when we were planning this, I had asked the council and the budget committee for some extra funds in that account because I was very nervous that if whatever added expense we were going to incur because of COVID and because of the delay, I didn't want to run short on that account and going into this fiscal year knowing that we would be budgeting for two financial town referendums. So as it happened, the clerk's office covered most of the work on poll workers and getting that together. So I now feel that there is excess money in that account. We've only used between 6,000 and 7,000, which is much less than our normal year would have been. We didn't advertise as much. It was in a shorter time frame, and we ended up saving considerable money. So right now there would be 20-some thousand in there. Since I was the one who asked for it, I feel I should at least put some of that money, give it back towards the council contingency for a different expense that the council may come up with. But I just feel like it shouldn't be held in that account just sitting there because it was budgeted at my request, but it was budgeted much more than I ended up needing. This is still gonna leave about 18,000 for another FTR in the spring. So that's my request, that you approve that transfer of 10,000.
Well, I will say, Madam Clerk, thank you very much because, you know, the council contingency can get a little skinny sometimes, and especially with this COVID thing going on. So we appreciate your generous offer. Are there any questions for Madam Clerk? John?
Yeah, Madam Clerk, you know, with the 10,000, I understand going back to council contingency, but I know with the way that we're running elections right now, there's additional manpower and everything. Wouldn't those funds be needed in the general election account, or do you have enough in there to cover the early voting and all that stuff?
No,
It's a different
we have ample in the general election.
Okay.
We've been trying to save money on that end as well. And this in no way, by the way, it does not affect any of the other accounts in the town clerk's budget. They're adequately funded. This one in election was just something I had asked for extra money in, not needing it. I just feel like at least this one I should turn back in. As far as the election account, if there will be money left in that account, but because we budget every year for elections and it's a restricted account, it wouldn't make sense to alter that one at all, because it just means next year budget, you might not need as much. I have heard that there's going to be a special election, but maybe the state will be funding that. So we'll see. But there's adequate funds in there. This doesn't impact it.
There'll be a special election, Nancy?
Well, there were no bond issues on the November
Oh,
3rd election. I'm just guessing that the state may want some bonds.
They might, but
They've
first,
had-
but first they have to pass a budget. They haven't done
Yeah,
that yet. So,
Honestly,
Yeah, you're right.
You
You're
know.
right about that.
anyway, are there any other questions, or do I have a motion, or Denise, you have your hand up?
I'd like to make a motion if that's okay.
Please do.
I'd like to make a motion to transfer $10,000 from account 1100-6995 financial town referendum to account 1020-6890 council contingency fund.
Second.
There's the motion in a second. Councilor deMedeiros,
Yes.
Councilor Perry,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Cook,
yes.
Councilor Clarke,
Yes.
Councilor Driggs,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next is under my name. It's a discussion regarding direction and guidelines to the town administrator for the policy on merit-based increases for department heads. So just a quick reminder, when we were doing the budget this year, we had a discussion about moving away from the, sort of standard 2% raises if we have the money available for everybody, to a merit-based system, which would give us the opportunity to recognize our department heads that are really, doing outstanding work. And at the same time, it would avoid some of the situations where in the past, where we've actually had a department head who was, on a performance plan, or, it wasn't quite working out, yet at the same time they were getting a raise. So we had a discussion about moving in this direction. And essentially the budget was structured so that rather than a standard 2% getting put into every department head salary line in the budget, the equivalent of 2% for all of them was placed instead into a pot in the contingency fund. The idea was if and when the budget was adopted, and then once we had a permanent town administrator, that we would start to go to work on a policy for merit increases. Because if you're going to do this, you need to have a fair written policy. Now, obviously, this council won't necessarily be the council that adopts the policy, but I do think that now that Chris is in place, getting him started on developing that policy that he can bring to a future council, given where we are in the year, is a good idea. So I just put together, just some sort of general bullet item thoughts, concepts that the town administrator might consider in this, and then any other counselors, starting with, if you're going to do a merit-based, you've got to have a reasonable number of standard metrics, not 37 or anything like that. Frankly, I think our performance evaluations that we have right now they're pretty weak, and they ask the same question 7 different ways, but it's the same question. So, from my background in the corporate world, usually for department head, there are some number of things that are sort of generic, common to everybody. That's like the basic stuff in your job description. Do you get that done? How do you manage your department? Do you function within your budget? Is your department running efficiently? And finally, how do you work with? Do you have a positive attitude? You conduct yourself professionally? And then the idea beyond that would be that the town administrator would work with each department head to come up with some number, not a huge number, of reasonable goals and objectives that they have for the year, things that they want to accomplish. And it should be a reasonable number, something that's attainable. And then it's things like, I know the police department is working and the police chief is working on getting the accreditation done. It might be a fee structure project where, the department wants to get approval date for changing fees. It could be getting everybody through a certain kind of training, or there's a project that we want to do and that we want to implement it. So, you know, there should be a small number of specific goals. The goals need to be agreed upon by both the town administrator and the department head at the beginning of the year. So it's clear this is, you know, this is what I'm working on. Ideally, you have a mid-year review. It doesn't have to be a big thing. It doesn't have to be in writing, to sort of check in. How are you doing? Has anything changed? Obviously, there's a written annual review. And just sort of logistically, it may be that to do something like this, instead of doing reviews based on your start date, that that salary increases become effective for everybody, you know, at the start of the fiscal year, July 1st, so that everybody gets their increase at the same time. And in order to sort of balance that pot, because you've got to work out of the pot of money that you've been allocated for those increases that year in the budget process, that it may be that you move everybody's performance reviews into the last quarter of the fiscal year, so that you do everybody's reviews and you're sort of comparing them and able to look at it as a group and say, well, this is the money that's been allocated for me based on their performance, you know, how do I divide it up? Obviously the council has to initially approve what that pool is going to be, and then it has to be adopted through the budget process. And, you know, you can't, the administrator couldn't exceed that merit pool unless he went to the council, you know, for very specific approval. And finally, whatever policies is adopted, it would need to be adopted by the council. So none of these ideas that I'm throwing out here are necessarily the way that you have to do it. I'm just, you know, looking back on my experience, I probably did hundreds of performance reviews in my career, of some kind of ideas to get the administrator started with this. But if anybody has any other thoughts or comments, now's the time to sort of speak up, because I think, you know, Chris is going to get started on this in the not too distant future.
Quite frankly, I've already started on it a couple of weeks ago. I've been working with a couple of the, at least Chief Jones and one other on, I agree, what's out there, what's been used is terrible. And then to try to look online to see if there's anything available, you know, like any kind, you know, anything that's worth its salt is out there that's free is also terrible. I reached out to the league and the Rhode Island Managers Association as well. And there's not much that they're doing that falls in the same category as what this outlines. So I had crafted something, and I've been working with Chief Jones especially on crafting something that actually does give metrics, because it's unfair to use the standard checklist that we've been using. But it's going to take work from both parties, either the employee, or the manager, or whoever is being evaluated. That, you know, past history is going to be, you know, I can come up with some evaluation for the period that I've seen them work and the diligence that they've put into their efforts and where their offices have been to. But moving forward, we need to have some goals set that can be measured. So it can be a metrics-based evaluation. And it takes both of us to do that. The department head needs to outline their goals and aspirations of moving their departments forward. And I also need to add some things that they may also not think is worthwhile going down, but also need to be done, whether it be training in certain areas for all employees and those kinds of things. So I agree that this is a very good template to work off of, to give an appropriate evaluation, and for something that council can actually look at and digest better than the, you know, 35 checklist questions that really are just repetitive, that and really give no meaning to the work effort that the employees are putting in.
Nancy, you had a question?
You're muted, Nancy.
So in my background, and granted, well, actually part of it was government working as an attorney, but when you take a job and you're told these are what you're responsible for as the underpinnings of what you're hired to do, fine line between how much do you spell out, well, I don't know how to say it. There's just something that feels weird about this. It's like you get hired to do a job, you get hired in a position, that position encompasses a lot of duties, and you go and do your duties, and then you're judged on how well you do your duties. And this sounds almost like you're putting another layer in there that I don't quite understand. I guess I don't understand it.
I don't, I'll try and answer that. I think that your basic duties, you are judged on your basic duties. That's part of it. Your very basic duties that you have to do. But there are, in order to move the town forward and in order to move your department forward, there are things that you and the administrator will agree that are important, and they're important to get done. And you know, the employees that we have that are motivated, that want to get these things done and, you know, take them seriously and put the work in to do it, you know, I think should be rewarded for that. So for example, it doesn't say, and I know that the police chief is working on this, it doesn't say in the police chief's job description that getting the police department accredited is part of his job description. Nonetheless, that's a really important thing for the town. It will lower our insurance costs. There are significant benefits to doing it. It's a one-time thing. It's not something you do all the time. So having that as, you know, a goal or objective for the year, to have that completed by the end of the year is, you know, that's a viable thing. I think that there are things that come up, and I'm not, just here's another example. We've talked for a long time about the fact that we don't think we're being treated fairly on building permit fees by the state, right? But that would be a project or a something that we would ask the building official to, you know, to sort of shepherd through to get that done. There are always things that come up like that. And the employees that kind of, you know, want to say, yes, I want to get this done because it's going to help my department, should be rewarded. John, you have your hand up. And then I want Chris to be able to answer too.
Could I just have one response after John, just to your statement, Patricia?
Well, can you let me get back to Chris and then I'll get back to you since
That's
he
fine.
had his hand up too. John, go ahead.
Yeah, listen, Madam President, I you know, first off, I want to thank you for putting this together. And, you know, I think it's been an admirable thing for the council as a policy to move more towards a meritocracy. You know, I think ultimately for the town, the way that we get better and that government gets better is, you know, for us as an organization to, you know, solidly stand behind the idea that we're going to bring people in who want to move the ball forward and who want to see positive change and positive impact to the town and actually want to be here and actually want to do the job. And this moves us away from the potential of hiring somebody who's just, you know, going to come in and check the box. Not to say that we have anybody, you know, organization like that today. But it, you know, it certainly helps prevent, you know, the potential for us to hire somebody who says, here's my job description, I'm going to do it, and that's it. We want people who are going to run these departments, who are going to give 110%, and who are going to actively work, you know, for the town. And I think that this policy, you know, will help advance that mission.
Chris?
I agree. We have some really good employees, and some of the missions that they have are very daunting, and they'll be measured not just on the cookie cutter of, you know, they're required to do, you know, 30 patrolmen and, you know, man shifts and do police work. It's a lot more than that. When I've had the trust come in here and sit down and go through some of our exposure. And we'll do this more often. And I've sat with Rick Rogers on the same issues and Bruce Reimels, that we have things that we can do much better. And I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm just not. That's not at all. But steps that every manager can take to make it so that we minimize our exposure, our financial exposures out there, show that these managers are working towards doing what's right by our taxpayers, but what's right by doing what's right for this town. And they should be able to be, in my view, be measured on those metrics that they try to do to ensure the town is not putting itself in a hole or just not following policies or procedures that should be done. To that end, there are things that they see that are more beneficial to the departments. I don't run their departments. I don't micromanage their departments. I'm here to help them with their worst problem of the day. Their managers, they know these departments inside and out, and they should be able to manage them appropriately without me micromanaging them. So they have goals that they want to see done as well that will be beneficial to our taxpayers as well. So that's also another thing that they should be able to be measured on outside the generic boxes of you're a fire chief, you're a police chief, these are your duties and responsibilities. So and if we're not going to measure them on those types of things, then the merit raises don't really mean anything. So to me, I think it's important that we go down this type of standardized processing so that they have an expectation and they realize that that expectation is real, that they will be measured on these things.
So,
Nancy?
yeah, so maybe we're saying the same thing. I'm not in any way suggesting people should just be measured on a metric. You've been here 2 years, you're, blah, 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 you've achieved this, now 2 years later you get that. But there are certain things, and the two things Patricia mentioned come down from management. We need to make sure X is happening. And this is what we expect now of the fire department, whether it's, we need to get accredited. So we're hiring you, you figure out how to make that happen. Those are management goals we give to employees to accomplish. That's all I'm saying. And so maybe that's merit. I don't know. Maybe we're not talking.
Well, I'm
not talking about different things.
I'm not sure we are talking about different things.
Okay.
I think what we're trying to say is that, and when it comes to compensation, then, those folks who, grab the bit with those things and get them done, and, we want to reward accordingly. And, somebody who comes in and says, well, I'm doing a good job and I'm doing the basic things. Well, maybe that year they don't get quite as much of a raise as somebody who really, took those management directives, ran with them and got them all done. So,
well, I hope if we're talking that level, I have no problem with it, but to me, it's not even merit. It's just management makes the decision. These are the things we need to accomplish. We're hiring you as a policeman, as a fireman, as whatever, to accomplish. This is what the department needs coming down from management. And you either help with this and get rewarded for it, obviously, or you do the minimum and don't get rewarded as well. So if that's how it's working, I have no problem with it.
Okay.
Steve?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to say that I'm totally in favor of this approach to our personnel. I think you're talking about running the town hall more like a corporation.
Yeah.
Which I am totally in favor of, because when you have personnel policies that are clearly stated, applying to things like salary increases based on performance, where your salary increase might be anything from 0 to 5%, based on whether you met your goals and objectives that have been, discussed with your supervisor. Now you're running the town hall like a corporation, and it should be run like a corporation, I think. Now that brings up the question of where are these policies? A lot of them probably don't exist yet. So the policies have to be written, number one.
You're right.
Two, somebody has to, does this mean we need like an HR person, or does this all fall on the administrator's shoulders? So, there's a lot of things that have to be considered as we put this into place. But I'm totally for it. We just have to, go through the right steps to put it in place and then manage it and follow it from, now and in the future, regardless of who the future administrator might be or the personnel at the town hall. But it has to be documented and it has to be permanently put in place somehow. So those are my thoughts.
I agree.
John, you had your hand up, and I know Nancy, your hand went up after John's.
Nancy actually had her hand up before me, so if she's the one to speak first, I'd be.
Okay.
So just a quick question to Steve's comment. If, I agree with Steve, but how much does this just depend on management, the town, as opposed to labor negotiations? How much?
Well, keep in mind, we're only talking about department heads here.
Right.
I mean, this is not for.
Oh,
this
that's
is not-
true. That's true.
This is not for
Okay.
union employees. We are only talking about the town administrators, direct reports who are department heads who are not covered under collective bargaining agreements. Denise, you had a question? John?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do want to echo one thing that Councilor Clarke said, and I think that the next council should certainly look at taking this up and creating a position, but the town absolutely should have an HR position. There should be somebody who fills that role, who helps monitor and make sure that this isn't just coming out of, the administrator's office. And more to the point, since Councilor Clarke made the analogy between, the municipality operating more like a corporation. We are a municipal corporation. And most importantly, I don't think we can find any corporation out there that has a $50 million a year revenue line item that does not have an HR professional. So, for my fellow councilors who are running for reelection, and for anybody else who's watching that is running for the position, I hope and pray that you will take a look at that in the next council cycle and fill that role, because it's desperately needed.
Anybody else, any other thoughts from anybody? I mean, we're not taking a vote on this. It was more to, sort of, have a discussion with the administrator to kick this off. We said we were going to do it. The budget was adopted that way. We have a permanent town administrator, thank goodness. So I didn't want to let it fall through the cracks to get the process started.
Okay.
Okay. In that case, like I said, I'm sure that the town administrator will be in contact with a future council, discuss the potential policy and get their ideas and input, as well as, talk to his department heads. And it will be at the pleasure of a future council to, approve that policy and go forward with it and enact it if they so desire. Item F, Councilor Cook, discussion and possible vote to advertise a public hearing for proposed ordinance amendment, Article 1, Section 10, public nuisance of animals.
Thank you. I don't know, do you want me to read it or just?
Well, I don't think you need to read it.
Okay. All right. I do know that, and she was invited, Animal Control Officer Stills. Is she here?
Yes.
Okay. I was going to let her speak to this because this is going to be part of her job to maintain this code of ordinance, and I think it'll be very helpful for her to do her job. So she's got a couple of ideas, and I'm very open to her ideas. Like I said, she's the one that has to enforce this, so I respectfully turn this over to Jennifer, who's the Animal Control Officer.
Hello, everyone.
Thank
I'm
you.
grateful for Councilor Cook taking us on and bringing this to attention. Back when I switched over from dispatcher to animal control last year, I was looking at the ordinances we have in town, and I noticed that nuisance ordinance was repealed. Not sure what reason, but
We aren't either, but we're not either. No one can figure that out. It was
I noticed it.
Mike's got his hand up. Mike, did you?
Yeah, I with the help of the deputy clerk and the clerk, we actually pulled that ordinance, and I'm assuming that ordinance was so vague as to have a nuisance, excessive barking that annoys the sensibilities of the average person, blah, 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 and that would be unconstitutional. And so it was repealed in its entirety.
Okay.
Okay, it does make sense. However, so two of my main complaints I get almost daily, definitely weekly, are dogs at large and then barking dogs. So we all know, someone knows a neighbor that has a dog that habitually barks and it gets under your skin eventually. I know it's not in this ordinance right now being shown. We do have people that complain about other animals being loose all the time and defecating on their property. So this is all great. However, I would like to see if maybe we can add the noise part. I think that's definitely, aside from dogs being off leash, my top two. Second complaint, the most I get, excuse me, I'm half asleep, it's late for me, is the barking dogs. And actually, I do also like that it says animals, not just dogs, because we are a farm town. We have a lot more animals than just dogs here. So I get complaints of roosters crowing constantly, just other animals as well, but mostly the dogs barking and dogs being at large are basically my day-to-day complaints. I do see on the fines here as well, I mentioned to Councilor Cook, first offense being a little high. I think maybe we go with the dogs at large fines are the 25 first offense, second offense 50, and then third and subsequent offenses being 100. But that's all I have to say.
Mike, go ahead.
A couple of things. I'm happy to look into the barking part of it. That's the most difficult from an enforcement and from a constitutional perspective. You know, dogs and animals bark and make noises, but you know how you measure that. What's annoying to one is not annoying to some. Other. It's very hard to enforce, and I think that's why it was repealed in the first place. So that will require a little bit more research. As far as the fines, that's up to the council. So that the town clerk reminded me that all fees and fines are actually pulled out of the ordinances and put in a fees and fines resolution on a yearly basis. So that probably needs to be pulled out. As far as the at large, I think that is pretty clear that they can't be at large and it is a nuisance. The only thing that I just want to caution the council is, and I apologize to Councilor Cook. I understand that she was very upset at the last council meeting for my failure to get this on the agenda sooner. But these are all great suggestions. I know that we're in the middle of 8 days to an election, and my recommendation would be that we just continue this to the next council so that they can, take it up and pass it, or at least set a public hearing on it, and then let them, decide whether they want to move forward with it. Because I don't want to get into a legal battle of the council that may have put this down for a public hearing. It's not the same council who might ultimately approve it. So I wanted it to be the same body of people, and I know that based upon retirements, that at least 3 of you will not be here.
I think that's probably a good point. And maybe that would give a little bit of time to see if there's something that's defensible about, a barking dog that, is just, barks habitually. John?
I would suggest that maybe the continuance actually be to the second meeting in November, because whether or not the Board of Elections is able to certify the election results on the 3rd by the next meeting, will remain to be seen. There are a number of mail ballots that are out there, so we may not have certification, and it may still be us, or maybe that meeting gets postponed. So, my suggestion would be to continue it to the second meeting in November, not the 1st.
That might be a good idea. The only other comment I'll make about this, specifically a little bit, to Jennifer's point, is that sometimes people have farm animals in very residential neighborhoods and they bring them in after the fact, and it's loud and it's noisy and whatever it is. But I also know that sometimes, particularly in the more rural parts of town, you have people who have had farm animals for generations, and then someone moves in from someplace where there aren't farm animals, and they don't like living next to farm animals, and they don't like it that there's manure spreader on the crop fields, and they don't like it that they can hear the sheep. So I just also want to be a little careful about our rural heritage here, and the fact that we do have people who have, have farms and have had farm animals for a long time that have been there for a very long time, that we don't create something where it becomes impossible for them to, continue to raise the farm animals that they're raising. Sometimes, folks move in and think, wow, this is really bucolic and it's nice. And then they realize that, the farm next door has roosters, or they spread cow manure in the spring and they're not so thrilled. So that would be my one other concern. Nancy?
So I just would like Donna's reaction. It is on, Donna's worked very hard on this, done a lot of research on it, and it is on for discussion and possible vote to advertise a public hearing for a proposed ordinance amendment. I'm not sure, I guess I have two questions. I know Donna was waiting for something from Attorney Marcello in terms of an ordinance. I don't know if we're set to go with that, but I guess would like to hear from Donna whether she's okay continuing it.
Donna? Donna?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. It's a little bit under the gun now. I tried to get this done with this council. It is very disappointing. I don't know if they'll take up the baton. That I don't know. This is something that is affecting the ability of the animal control officer to do her job. And that is the most important thing as to why I was so intent on trying to get this done before the November election. It had to do with her. That's why I'm so disappointed. I guess really there's nothing much I can do. I'd like to move it forward, but with 21 days to post, who knows who's going to be in the next council. I would hope that they would take it up.
Do we have an ordinance in place?
No, there isn't any ordinance. This is it. I mean, either it goes forward for posting with the amendments that we need to make, and there's also a word wrong for attach. It's supposed to be attack. I don't know. I feel impotent as to what to do. I feel bad that I couldn't get this done for Jennifer. It's just really frustrating. I guess it's going to have to wait and be tabled till the next town council.
I mean, if you want to put it down for the public hearing with the understanding that the council is putting it down for public hearing, is not going to be the council that approves it. I guess it's just a public hearing. If the council wants to go forward with it, they can go forward with it. If they don't, but if you want to just hedge your bets, just put it down for a public hearing for the second, as Mr. Edwards has indicated, and that will give me some time also to research the marking issue, that we can make the amendment at that appropriate time.
Does anyone else have any feelings on it? I just don't want to step on toes.
I would like to think that if the animal control officer, and to be honest, I have to admit this is the first time I have heard that the animal control officer is in need of this ordinance. And so I understand she does, but I've never been told this. And honestly, I haven't heard it from the chief either. So I would think that the next council, understanding that the animal control officer is looking for support, would certainly be willing to take it up. But I do think it would be better to have one public hearing and one ordinance. And if there's a way to find some defensible language about barking dogs, which is not in here right now, but something, because that's clearly something she's telling us that would be very helpful to her, that it would be better to do a little research and, hope that the next council, if the animal control officer is telling us that they need something like this, that we should be doing it. And frankly, I don't think anybody doesn't understand that it can be really annoying to have a dog that barks and barks and barks and barks. Like, who's going to be against trying to do something about that? So I tend to think that we asked the solicitor to do a little bit more due diligence on this, and we see if Jennifer has any other thoughts, and the police chief, and you know, and let the next council take it forward. John?
With regard to the barking dog, though, I will mention that, you know, there are a number of dogs who dislike the large brown vans and the FedEx vans and the post office. So I'll be preparing my defense in the event that this passes with a barking ordinance, that that it's UPS's fault.
Yeah, I think we all have dogs that do that, but I think Jennifer's talking about the one that barks for 3 hours straight, I think is the more of the problem. So that would be my suggestion, but somebody can, you know, Donna, if you want to make a motion, and you can try, it's up to you, but we should.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to word it at this point. I make a motion to well, no, we want it to be finished, right? Make a motion to move this business of the ordinance, public nuisance of animals, to allow for more research for the barking dogs and noise to be looked into better, and to move it forward for the next council to have a public hearing after they look at the new ordinance as written, with the change to the penalties. I don't know if it's supposed to be, apparently not supposed to be in the ordinance, but in the fees part of the ordinances. And that's about it.
Okay, John?
Just quick clarification, Councilor Cook, you suggesting that you're gonna continue this until the next council, because, or would you like to see this go forward as a public hearing for the next council?
Well, well, it'd be nice for a public hearing, but I'm hearing that we really need, you know, which I did have the barking dog problem on here, but it became an issue that it was felt that it was not legal. So she really can't do her, I mean, I guess it could be amended. How should we do this, Mike? How should we do this? Honestly.
Yeah, let's ask the solicitor. Would you like to make a recommendation here?
No, I mean, my recommendation was, if I agree with the council president that I think if the dog officer, animal control officer, excuse me, wants to put something down, the council is going to deal with. So I would just put it down for the, and I see the chief shaking his head, so he'll have the full force of the police department behind him, and he's got a gun, so that usually means. So just put it down for the public hearing in November. We'll advertise it as is. Gives me a little bit more time to research the barking dog issue. I just want to warn the council, however, and you may be disappointed, there may be no solution to a barking dog issue, because it may not just be enforceable as a matter of law. And there's a reason why the town repealed that in 1965. I'll look at other towns and ordinances and do a little bit more research, but it is a little bit vague. So if Donna, you amend your resolution to advertise this on the 2nd November meeting, whenever that may be, John, you had the date, that would probably be the appropriate. And by the 28th. What time? And if we have amendments to offer at that time, we can offer it at the public hearing.
Second.
November 24th.
Great.
If that's your motion,
Yeah.
Councilor Cook.
No, thanks, John. It's just way too complicated.
Okay, now.
November 23rd, is that the second meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so is the motion to advertise for a public hearing on November 23rd?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Seconded by me.
seconded by John. Okay, so roll call vote. Councilor Clarke,
Yes.
Councilor Edwards,
Yes.
Councilor Driggs,
Yes.
Councilor deMedeiros, You're muted, Denise. Denise,
Yes, yes.
Counselor Perry,
Yes.
Counselor Cook,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. So that's how that'll get taken up the 23rd.
Good luck to the next council.
Yes. Okay, Counselor Perry, discussion and update on recreation director's position and gate attendants positions.
Yes, Madam President, thank you. After putting this on the agenda, I have discussed this with the administrator and the chairman of the recreation, so I'd like to table this until we have a workshop to review the contracts and then come back to the council at a later date with some recommendations or some suggestions. So I'd like to pull this off as of tonight.
All right, that's okay. I do have one question that I'm just going to throw out there, and I'm not going to be here when you take it back up. But, you know, it occurred to me, in addition to the young people who work the gate, that we have a lot of really sort of great folks who are retired in this community who might not want to work all day, every day, but, you know, who might enjoy, you know, working at the beach as a gate attendant for a little bit. And so I just wondered if we'd ever considered having that position be part-time, and maybe some of our retired folks who, you know, like the beach might like to.
Madam President, that was one of
Nancy
the
Mello.
things that I talked about going to the senior center, see if there was elderly people that were looking for a part-time position, few hours here and there, and sitting at the beach. So that was some of the suggestions I had. So I'd just like to discuss it with the Recreation Committee and the administrator later on, and maybe look at some other possibilities.
Well, I think that's wonderful because, you know, Madam Clerk and I volunteered down there a few times.
Yep.
And where we volunteered and manned the gate. And we're both going to be retired right after this election. So.
And also pulling weeds. Don't forget about weeding. That's.
I know we have
planting trees. So there are some.
There's some other things to do, but yeah, Madam Clerk and I might, you know, we might be available to get out there and help a little. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. I was actually going to suggest Madam Clerk. I saw her smiling at the beginning. So Councilor Perry, I think it would be worthwhile to try and recruit her, but also worth mentioning, we did have somebody that we appointed last meeting to 2 boards and positions that said that he would, he's got a lot of free time on his hands. So he might be one worth reaching out to as well. And the added benefit there is, as a retired officer, he would have, you know, the ability to enforce entry and exit and the experience to do so. So there's my other suggestion.
All right. Well, thank you, Councilor Perry.
Thank you.
On to announcements and comments. Just a brief one that I have on a public update on COVID-19. I'm sure by now you've all heard that the numbers in Rhode Island are not going in the right direction again. We are now, as I saw today, of the 50 states, we have the second largest percentage increase of any of the 50 states in terms of 2-week growth in cases. And you may have noticed that Tiverton has been one of the communities that's seen a significant bump in the last couple of weeks. So just a reminder to everybody to be as safe as you can and wear your mask, wash your hands, be courteous of your fellow citizens, be courteous of our businessmen and merchants who are doing the best they can to keep everybody safe, and you know, be respectful of their requests. You know, I hope we don't go back to where we were before, but you know, it's not great right now, and just sort of asking all of our fellow citizens to be cognizant and do our part to try and keep everybody as safe as we can till this is over. Councilor Driggs.
Can I just ask a question? So we all know that testing is definitely increased. So the numbers of people testing positive probably have increased. What's the hospitalization and death rate doing in Rhode
I don't know, I do know that the deaths are increasing, although the good news seems to be in general, that is they're getting better, and Denise probably knows this better than I do, is they're getting a little better at treating it. The, outcome is a little better. But the hospitalization rate is going up significantly. And I think I saw today 163 people in Rhode Island in the hospital or something like that. But which is really, they say that's one of the real measures, right? Because people, different states report their testing differently. Rhode Island's getting tagged because we put the asymptomatic tests in with the symptomatic people, and and so how you parse all of that. But pretty much everybody says that the hospitalization rate is what it is, regardless of whether you're testing or not testing, or how much testing you're doing. And where we were down for a while to having 50 people in the hospital, or I think even in the 40s we got really low, where we're heading back up to 200 again, and in that direction. And that's the indicator that nobody can really argue with. So it's not great, we're not the only state in this position, but it's just sort of a reminder to everybody. And Tiverton has had 2 of the bigger bumps. We sort of weren't having a lot of new cases for a while, and I think the last 2-week reports have both been in double digits here. So, and Fall River is in the red zone in Massachusetts. And I'm going to let Denise say something because she sees this every day. But the point is, we've seen a bigger increase in cases, and we're next to a place that's in a red zone. So being careful is good. Denise, I don't know if you want to add anything because you're in the thick of this.
Fall River is going up, and that could be some of the reason why Tiverton is going up. But we're seeing more of it within the past week or so. We're seeing more of it. So I was just going to say it's back. Well, it's always been there, but people are being hospitalized for it again.
So we just all have to try and do the best we can to keep each other safe. Madam Clerk, you have an update on the general election that's coming up?
Yes, well, I provided us some backup, an advertisement listing all the poll locations, and that's on our website. That's been advertised at least twice since kind of times in the Newport Daily News and in the Fall River Herald. So everyone that receives newspapers should have seen that. What I'd really like to mention, though, is that the emergency or so-called early voting at the town hall, we are really experiencing some good high participation in that. Today, there were 241 people that came in to vote early. It is a voting setup where you get the ballot. Mr. Edwards was there. You get the ballot, you go to your privacy booth, you fill it out, and you put it directly into the DS200 machine. So that seems to be a favorable preference on how some people are voting. Also, our mail ballots continually come in 50 to 100 a day. So that also, and quite frankly, we are over 10% now for early voting. 10% of our voters, that's quite a.
What is that, 1,400?
1,300 and some is our total active and inactive voting.
Nancy, what is the total at town hall so far?
I think we just passed 1,600.
Yeah.
Also, in-person voting. We've also got about 1,500 in mail ballots.
So I just want to clarify, all 7 will be open.
All 7 locations will be open. So you will go to your usual polling location.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Town Solicitor, Mike?
Mayor, Just a quick report. We had a finding of no violation on the last open meeting complaint that was filed. And it came out, it was in your packet. I think it came out about 2 weeks ago. And so there was no violation, and that had to do with the advertising and posting and notice sent to the to solicitor candidates back in, I believe, in December of 2019, of which I think I was part of that interview process. But there was a finding of a no violation found by the AG's office. And the last thing on my agenda is as you know, the council approved over the last couple of weeks, numerous tax abatement and appeals that were pending in the court. I think there were 5 of them. They have all now settled, and we are slowly getting back to sign releases. And the ones that we did get back were in your packet. So if you have any, and they are public record. So if anybody wants to make a request for them, they can certainly get them, and it's there for everyone to see. We're just catching up with the council already approved the settlements. We're just catching up with the paperwork, and it takes sometimes for the plaintiff's attorney to get back to us, but we're getting them in, and that should be good from the perspective of the tax assessor, because you're going to be doing a revaluation within the next year, I think. So
I would just like to make one comment on the OMA complaint that was filed by Councilor Driggs. I would like to note that the Attorney General's office actually made the point of saying that not only did we not have a violation, but in reviewing the executive session, that we had gone to great lengths repeatedly to make sure that they actually acknowledged how diligently we worked in that executive session to make sure that we did not have any open meetings violations. And I thought it was nice of them to note that in their finding.
Patricia Hilton?
Yes.
I would like to just make one comment that I will see what happens with that, whether we want to appeal the decision, but I will say I was very pleased to see that in the last request for proposals we sent out, we did indicate in the request that the notice that we sent from the office, we did indicate that there was going to be a discussion and possible vote, and that's what didn't happen last time, and that's all I want to say.
Well, the Attorney General has adjudicated this. They looked at that complaint and they found no violation. So
I understand that, but I'm very glad that we have changed our procedure when we sent the notice out this time to let the candidates know that there was going to be not just, we're going to discuss your character, but that it also indicated a possible vote. And I was glad to see that. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
okay. The town administrator, you have some updates for us, and I believe
Good news.
believe they're all good news. We like good news.
So on the community septic system loans, the infrastructure bank has approved the loans. They have made a release of funds to Rhode Island Housing. There has been I think there were 8 applicants who have been in waiting for a while, have now started the process of getting their loans closed and either completing the process that took place. And I did meet with wastewater this week, and we are going to ensure that Rhode Island Housing provides us all the information we need for all these loans on a timely basis so that we don't wind up in this predicament again. They only released $600,000 worth of the money, I believe, to start with, and there'll be when that money runs low, there's a process to go through releasing the remainder of the funds. So that's a good thing on behalf of getting these septic systems that are in dire repair, in need of repair, absolutely being fixed. On the landfill, we have some good news. It's not in writing yet. So while we've heard good news, I still want to see it in writing first. Tim Teese especially, and I do have to give him a lot of credit because it's been a pretty laborious process. He started and we were after them in the middle of August to get something going on this. Again, towards early September, it was difficult getting through the staff in DEM, and they're well-meaning, But ultimately, while there was some dissension in the lower ranks, as it went up through their administrative process and their legal end, they are going to grant us, it's a two-step process of giving us some leeway. They're gonna allow us, I believe, 30,000 tons to reshape the top of that landfill. So we have to, our license is up in December, and we're in the process now of reapplying for a new license with a 2-year caveat and/or the 30,000 tons, whichever comes first. And that'll be the end of it. So it's a little bit different than normal, but it's still all good news because we believe that amount of tonnage, and there is room for it. We believe that there is ample room, some valleys and peaks in the reshaping of that dome, that we can get this done. That will give us at least ample time to start the process of closing. Part of the caveats are that we will begin capping some of the older areas. So we're also in the process of getting some bid specs together so we can go out to bid and start closing some of the areas that are defined as absolutely closed. So it is good news. I would just like to see it all in writing first so that we have a document to hold on to that, gives us clear guidance. I have spoken to the director. She did assure me that regardless of the licensing issue, if they will grant us ample time to get this process memorialized and formalized, so there'll be no disruption. So I'm happy to report back to the council that we absolutely have some good news. So
That is a bit of a gamble on the budget this year in hoping that the DEM would. I would like to also reiterate the administrator's comments and how deeply they've worked with DEM staff. I would especially like to let the rest of the council, as well as the citizens, know that Chris himself deserves enormous kudos on shepherding this project through. And I do know that his reaching out directly to the director and his conversation with her about all the work that we've done so far to prepare closing the landfill, the money that we've got set aside, as well as our plan to go forward with the recycling center eventually is, just as soon as we get out from underneath this budget crisis. I think that helped enormously, and that Chris also deserves a tremendous amount of credit for getting this done and being able to work with the director and senior management at DEM to make our case, explain the situation, and explain that we really are making a good faith effort here. But between COVID and the casino, we're just, we're against the wall, and DEM understood. And I think the director intervened on our behalf after her discussions with Chris. So great job, Chris, really. John?
Yeah, I want to echo those sentiments. Thank you, Mr. Cotta, for getting that done for us. Just to put it in real world numbers here, 30,000 tons. What is our average tonnage on a yearly basis?
I believe it's just under 15.
Beautiful. Give
So that is.
There's a lot of people who went to work on it. And it's not all me, believe me. I give credit where it's due, and I can't thank PAR enough because they're the ones who actually come up with this plan and devised it and could articulate it well, even though there was some dissension in the lower ranks at DEM with the regulators. I do think that the state did, especially through the director, has recognized that, this is a predicament and it's the temporary thing, but this is the end. This will be the end. There'll be no more.
That's what you say now.
Oh, well, I don't.
Unless you want to put a liner in there, don't comment on it.
Yeah.
Councilor Hill.
Although it does relieve an enormous potential budget pressure this year. If we didn't get this approval, we were really going to be scrambling. But I think it's all going to work out. Councilor Driggs.
I also want to thank you, Chris Cotta, very much for getting this done. And I particularly want to thank Donna Cook on the town council for pushing the issue. Thank you, Donna.
You're welcome.
I helped her with that too.
Yeah, I think when the entire
John,
council
then.
voted not to, fund the landfill closure this year and go forward with the reset, we took a bit of a gamble on that budget line item, but we all agreed that that was really the only option we had, and happily it's worked out. So that brings us up to executive session, and we have one item for executive session. So do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So before you do that, I have Jennifer, and I wasn't sure if because you wanted an update on this particular project. So I didn't know if you wanted to bring Jennifer in executive session as well.
Yes, that would actually probably be good. Thank you. John?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to go into closed executive session. Council President Hilton, 4246 5A6, prospective business, industrial park, plat 109, lot 32, 33, 34, and 35.
Second,
There's a
yes.
second. And yes, Council Clarke?
So Andrew, I'll text
Yes.
you when we're done.
Council Clarke is a yes. Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Council deMedeiros? Denise is a yes. Council Driggs?
Yes.
Council Perry? Sure, you
Yes.
yes, thank you. Councilor Cook?
Yes.
To seal the minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Can I have a motion to seal the minutes?
Motion to seal the minutes.
Second,
Second. Councilor Clarke?
Yes.
Councilor Edwards?
Yes.
Councilor deMedeiros?
yes.
Councilor Driggs?
Yes.
Councilor Perry?
Yes.
Councilor Cook?
Yes.
And I'm a yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the council. At the executive session, no votes were taken. There was a general discussion about the town's future actions and instructions given to me to perfect the closing of the property as listed as the plat and lot number on the agenda as plat 109, lot 32, 33, 34, and 35.
Thank you. As there is no other business before the council on our agenda, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Is
So
there,
moved.
there's a, yep, is there a second? And I'll take a hand or voice vote. All in favor of adjournment?
Yes.
Yes.